All right. Good afternoon to those of you on the East Coast. Good morning to those of you on the West Coast. Welcome to This Week in Pop Culture, the show in which we give you the goings on in the past, say, week in the world of pop culture, whether we're talking about local news, film and TV news, tech news, you know, and whatever falls within the world of pop culture. We try to bring you up to speed so that way you are not left in the wind. I'm your host, Brandon Troy, co-creator of Movers and Shakers Unlimited. And of course, I'm not going to be alone in talking about the said topics that are happening this week. We will have Spills joining us momentarily. But let me know, one way or another, where you guys are tuning in from. Just give me a heads up. Let us know. With the things that we have going on this week, you probably see in the background that we will be talking about some of the goings on in the NBA and our sports cooler talk, which was, the main thing that we'll be talking about towards the tail end of the show, about some player movements, some re-ups of some players that are returning to their said franchises, some players that are leaving their franchises after a storied career with those said franchises. Or maybe perhaps not a storied career, but a substantial tenure thus far in their NBA career, and now are moving on to a new franchise. And then, of course, be remiss not to talk about some of the player movement that has happened when it comes to the NBA draft. So we will be able to dive into that. But before we do that, there are a couple of things to dive into. We did have a figure within the music industry who passed away. And then also we had some information regarding some local news information. If you know us, you know that we are located in the DC metro area. So we will be talking about some information regarding our local transportation and some changes that will be on the way in the near future. So with that, I'll just give you guys a heads up that we'll make an effort to timestamp the stories accordingly. Give me one moment here. But yeah, efforts will be made following the airing of this show to provide timestamps accordingly for each of the stories. We're going to start first with our Legacies Remembered segment, as we had a major figure in the music industry that passed on Monday. That person being hitmaker Clive Davis, who died in his Manhattan home per his rep on Monday. Over the music mogul's 6-decade career, he has brought a number of artists, to the forefront, whether we're talking about Janis Joplin, Whitney Houston, Bruce Springsteen, and nurtured the careers of others as well, whether we're talking about Billy Joel, The Grateful Dead, Alicia Keys, Simon and Garfunkel, Jennifer Hudson, Barry Manilow, Pink Floyd, Earth, Wind and Fire, Aerosmith. I could go on and on and on. He passed at the age of 94. A lot can be, said one way or another when we're talking about Davis. I know, you have folks that are naysayers in terms of how he operated, and then, those who, recognize the impact that he's had on the music industry. However way you fall, it is still, you would be remiss not to consider the impact that he has had on the music industry in terms of, as I said, providing the path for many artists that, many of them that are iconic, went on to have legendary, iconic careers, had those said careers or had those said introductions into the industry, to the world, because of Davis. However way, you may, fall. I still want to give, credit where credit is due when we're talking about those, those names that I just provided. For those of you out there, curious to know, where you guys fall one way or another. Where do you rank Mr. Davis in terms of the impact that he's had on the music industry, in terms of those artists that he had an influence on, in terms of being able to introduce them to the world and to be able to shape those, say, careers? Curious to know. You can let us know in the comments, or where you guys fall in that said regard. So with that, we'll move on to our next topic. And like I said, I'll have Spills join us a little later. We'll move on to our next topic. So again, condolences to the family or friends of Clive Davis, who passed away on Monday. Moving on to our local news. We did have some information regarding aspects of the local transportation system in the DC metro area. These were some features that were revealed to be on the way for those utilizing, as I said, public transportation in the DC metro area. Starting first with NBC Washington, they shared in the news story new upgrades that were coming for the Metro fare machines to streamline the ease of use for customers, including payment options, better on-the-spot information, so like real-time information of what's happening in and around the area, as well as a variety of language options. But I don't want to be a talking head. I will see if I can pull up the said video. Again, this is a shout out to NBC Washington for looking into the matter regarding these new improvements that are going to be made with the Metro fare machine. So if you give me one moment, I'm going to pull it up now, so that way you guys can check it out. Let's see here. See if I can pull up this video for you all. One moment. And while I'm pulling this up, you can let us know where you guys are tuning in from. Let me know where you guys stand on the story that I just shared about the passing of Clive Davis. Let's see if, I believe I have the video this go around. Let's see if we have it here. Yes, here we go.
Metro fare machine, a thing of beauty. Don't you love all this information that's up here? Hey, how much does it cost to go to Shady Grove? $6.75, but you probably didn't know that off the top of your head. You've got all this information here. Step 1, step 2, step 3, touch your smart trip card, press this button. There are numbers here. This is like trying to solve algebra, maybe geometry, whatever, some kind of complex math And Metro says all of this needs to get way more simple. Would you even know what it costs to go from like point A to point B?
Zero clue at all. Money just comes out. I'm just the intermediary.
Yeah, for so many Metro riders, help is required when approaching the daunting fare machine.
$2.
Now, Metro has awarded a contract of close to $40 million to Indra Group to design, supply, and maintain up to 450 new state-of-the-art customer terminals, as they'll be known. They'll replace the aging machines at all 98 stations. They're expected to be modern, accepting smartphone payments, provide helpful information on large screens, and be available in 15 languages. If all goes according to plan, these new fare machines should roll out in about a year. Ah, yes, the Metro fare machine, a thing of beauty.
All right. So just to give you guys, as I said, a recap. This is again a shout out to NBC Washington of dropping this information this past week and going into some of the improvements that are going to be made with the local transportation in the DC metro area. As someone who is a frequent user of the public transportation, I know sometimes it can be frustrating, especially when we're talking about DC when it comes to their subway system and or I should say just their public transportation in general, of having different fare types based on the type of day, a rush hour fare versus a non-rush hour fare. I know when I've traveled elsewhere in other cities, it's pretty streamlined in terms of what the expectations are of what you're going to be paying in terms of your fare versus having to deal with what time of day you're using the transportation, which seems to be the case in DC. So hopefully there is a more streamlined breakdown of what you're going to be paying in terms of what is needed in order to get from point A to point B. If it's frustrating for people that are local to the area, I can't imagine how frustrating it can be for those that are visiting the area, especially now where for those that are local to DC, that when it comes springtime and summertime, we do get an influx of tourists during those said seasons. So hopefully there is a more streamlined breakdown of the fares. I'm looking forward to some of those other features that they had in terms of talking about, by the minute information of things that are going on to be aware of. But, time will tell to see if it will help one way or another. So, but that wasn't the only thing that was shared this past week when we're talking about our local news. We did have some other information that was provided as well this week, and this was via ABC 7. They shared info surrounding, and you guys have probably seen some information about it, but I wanted to be able to share more details, is info surrounding the 8000 series subway that will eventually be in circulation for those who are going to be using public transportation in the DC metro area. So with that, I'm going to see if I can pull up that said video, so that way you have an idea of what that's going to look like. So let me see here if I can pull this up for you all. Okay, I think we have it here. I'm gonna back up our video. Here we go. All right, stand by.
And this is pretty much what you're going to see. You're going to notice a lot of changes. Among them, lights on the floor, more space for wheelchairs. Also, they say they're going to be able to put more information on signs like this one. Another big change. We're used to these two seats right here when you get on. What we're not used to is more seats along the side like these. So these new trains are going to feature a lot more seating like this. If you've ever been on the New York City subway, this is how they do it. But it will still have traditional seating like we're used to on Metro like this as well. I'm told there will be about 8 fewer seats per car, which is going to leave more room for people to stand. Now look at the floor again. You see they're also encouraging folks to leave strollers here, bicycles, luggage, and again, these lights on the floor that we didn't have before. In addition, they say there's going to be more security cameras on these new 8000 series trains. And now I want to show you the single biggest difference. We've never seen this on Metro before. Look at this. This is the end of one car. There should be a door here, right? No, there's something called an open gangway, and you can walk through to another car. So these rail cars.
I'm not going to lie, folks. Everything that has been discussed so far seems very promising, but I'm not going to lie when it comes to what they're sharing here about having what they call the open gangway. I can see too many issues potentially coming up about that. So I will be fascinated to see how that plays out once they start circulating these 8000 series cars, but I digress.
Cars are going to be in pairs. If you're on an 8-car train, there will be 4 pairs. And I mentioned earlier, you'll see more information on the new signs. This is an example of the kind of information. They might even tell you, hey, you can visit the Postal Museum at this exit. So again, just so many differences that these 8000 series trains will have. Now, the first time you're going to be able to ride one, it's still probably at least a couple years away. Look where I am. If you look out the window, you'll see I'm on the National Mall. This is part of the Great American State Fair that's going to be going on through July 10th. But this futuristic rail car is not the only one that you will be able to tour. So the other thing you can tour, oh my goodness, this is bringing back memories for 12-year-old Tom riding the Metro. Look at this. They have fully restored the original 1000 series train from 1976. Now, I don't go back that far, but look at it. The carpet, do you remember that? Longtime DC folks will absolutely remember the carpet. They restored it here. They even have old maps of the system from like this. I don't know when this is from because some of these stations don't exist at this time, but they also have old ads. Check this out for the Smithsonian, the National Zoo. Look at that, the old panda ad there. And then this one's my favorite over here. WTOP, our news partners, radio. They don't look like this anymore, straight out of the 70s here. So you can tour this also through July 10th at the fair going on the National Mall. I'm Tom Rousey. We're
All right, so there you guys have it. So in talking about the public transportation and what was just shared with the 8000 series cars, as I said, a lot of the features seem promising of really having designated areas for your luggage, for bikes, for strollers, for things like that. However, like I said, when we're talking about those gangways that are going to be available from going car to car. I can already see, and I don't want to put it, jinx it, but I can already see issues happening with that. So hopefully they have a way to ensure the safety there of going cart to cart like that, because I can see too many issues going on, especially now that when we're talking about, for those who are accustomed to catching the public transportation in DC on a regular basis, during rush hour, it can get pretty hectic, pretty busy. And I can already see that becoming an issue where more people are going to try to stuff into the train because of the perceived additional space that you have there in what they call this gangway, path between the carts. And it can end up being something that can be problematic, whether we're talking about with matters where we have youths that that utilize the Metro, or whether we're talking about just folks that are trying to rush to their destinations during certain times of the day where there is a lot of foot traffic. So hopefully there are things that will be implemented, that will be put in place to ensure that there aren't any issues safety-wise when it comes to those parts of the train with this new series. And Based off of what you heard in the video, again, that's a shout out to ABC7 for doing a tour of the 8000 series train. It's not going to be coming, it looks like, for a couple of years based off of what they shared, but at the same time, hopefully within that time they're able to do all the necessary tests that they need to do in order to ensure that it has a smooth transition as they start circulating those said train models for our metro system. And let me know, while I move on here to our main topic, let me know what your thoughts are on the public transportation. Whether you're a tourist or whether you're someone who's local to the DC area, just let me know what your thoughts are on where things stand now. How do you feel about the new fare machines that apparently they're on the way? Some of the things that they're going to be doing to kind of streamline the information that are on the fare card, on the fare machines. Some of the other features that it will have in terms of having different language options, in terms of having information, on the spot information that they're sharing. And then, similarly, let me know how you guys feel about the new train, subway train models with this 8000 series that's on the way too. Are you excited about it? Are you nervous about it? You can let me know down below in the comments. But for this show, the main topic that we're going to be talking about is sports cooler talk. Because as I said, we did have the couple of NBA stories that made the rounds, whether we're talking about re-ups, so re-ups being, players that returned to their said teams and got extended, some players who got traded, some key marquee players that got traded, as well as the NBA draft. So we're going to begin first on Monday. Let me see if I can pull this up for you guys. We're going to begin first on Monday, as it was reported by Shams Charania that Trae Young would sign a 4-year, approximately $212 million deal to stay with the Washington Wizards, with the player option in year 4. This came after the 4-time NBA All-Star declined his $49 million player option for a long-term commitment ahead of free agency. That same day, Shams would also report that free agent, and I apologize if I'm butchering your name, but Ayo Dosunmu intends to sign a 5-year, $112 million contract to return to the Minnesota Timberwolves, with the player option in the 5th season of that said contract. Per the news that was shared by Shams, this decision likely to provide this said offer came as a result of Ayo's impressive postseason performance this past season with the T-Wolves. Wednesday, per Shams, once again, we would have history being made as Austin Reeves would be offered a 4-year, $185 million max contract with a player option for the final season in 2029, 2030 to return to the Lakers, making his contract the richest for an undrafted player in NBA history. Now, moving on to the trades. On Monday, the Heat would trade Tyler Hero, LL Ware, Jamie Jaquez Jr., and I apologize if I'm butchering your name here, but Kasparas Jakusinas, number 13 pick in NBA draft, Nate Ament, first round picks in the 2031, and 2033 drafts, and then a pick swap in 2030. And then there was another piece to that as well, also a second round pick in 2033 for Giannis Antetokounmpo, of course, the Greek Freak, and Bobby Portis. So, the big thing, to look at there is that you have the Greek Freak that is going to Miami after, a storied period in with the Milwaukee Bucks, having won a title with the Bucks, is now moving on to his next franchise. And then we had another piece there. So because I wanted to, before I really dive into the Greek Freak and that move, it was on Thursday reported that point guard LaMelo Ball would join the Wolves in a trade that included himself and Josh Green to the T-Wolves, and with the Hornets receiving Naz Reid, an unprotected 2033 first-round pick from that draft, a first-round pick swaps in 2028, 2029, 2030, and then second-round picks in the drafts for 2029, 2032, and 2033. So, just to go over these particular moves, I want to go first through the re-ups that we had. Start first with Trae Young. When we're talking about Trae Young is, a perennial all-star. I know we've mentioned him being a four-time NBA all-star. I feel like there were, years that he, still should have earned the all-star nod. Is just by virtue of the market that he was in and the state of that current franchise that he did not get the nod. But, in a given night, he's going to give you 20 points. He's going to give you 10 assists. And now which I'll get into in a little bit, with the draft pick that they have, along with Anthony Davis, it seems like a no-brainer to have someone who is a reliable scorer on that team and someone who can also run your offense. The only concern that I have when it comes to Trae Young is size. I know that it's been demonstrated that it can be done, that you can win with a small guard. We saw it with Brunson and the New York Knicks this past season, where there was a lot of concern and skepticism about, their chances of winning an NBA title. But, Brunson was able to prove everyone wrong. Trae Young, is of that same ilk, where even though he is a smaller guard, when we're talking about his level of play, he's going to give you effort. As I say, he's going to give you consistency, whether we're talking about the points production or the assists. He's someone who's going to be able to provide you that double consistency night in and night out. And if he is a smaller guard, just like we saw with the Knicks, I feel like as long as the Wizards find guys that can defend around him, that deficiency that he may have defensively can still be hidden among the team's efforts to play defense. Because we saw that with the Knicks, where Brunson, is an incredible offensive player, but when it comes to defense, sometimes he gets targeted. And when we're talking about just having one player who has that as a challenge, when you have everyone else surrounding him that can defend, it helps to hide that said deficiency or that said weakness in his game. So I feel like when we're talking about the pluses versus the minuses, you have someone who can provide you offense, whether they are distributing the ball, whether they are scoring the ball. I feel like that is enough of a risk, as long as you do not have other players on your said roster who are similar that cannot defend. If he's the only player, that you have who is, it has that deficiency, there are ways that you can alleviate that or hide that issue. Now, when we're getting into Ayo and the T Wolves, he was an incredible addition this past postseason. Not surprised that they re-upped him for the $112 million. He was needed throughout that postseason, especially considering the injuries that were surrounding the team, particularly with their franchise player, with Anthony Edwards, who made every effort possible to be able to help his team and carry his team. But it was noticeable, it was recognizable that he wasn't 100%. And now with, which I'll get into in a few moments, the trade that they have, I feel like that's going to alleviate that need for him to have to do everything. Now they actually will have someone that can run with Edwards, but they also have someone else, a wing player that can also provide extra added offense, extra added energy. So that's a no-brainer. The one that is fascinating for me, and I'm not going to lie, and it's a bummer that I don't have my co-host here with me, because I know that he will want to defend this, but I will give him an opportunity to do so in a latter show, is the fact that Austin Reeves got re-upped for $185 million. Now, listen, Austin Reeves, incredible story, undrafted player, paid his dues, worked his way up, took advantage of his opportunities. That's all great and good. But if we are going to be realistic here, similar to what I had mentioned about Trae Young and Brunson, he is a player that is providing you that he's helping your team offensively, but he can be a defensive liability. And we saw that time and time again when we're talking about guards that are quick, called guards that have size. He doesn't have an easy time playing against those said guards. It wouldn't be as much of a concern of him being re-upped to the team if you had all the other surrounding parties there to be able to hide that particular deficiency or issue. But now that you're bringing him back, we already know that that Doncic is still with the team. So the idea was, I feel like some people believe that it would have made sense to shop Reeves away to see what you could get, value-wise for Reeves. So that way you didn't have two players that had that issue of defending affecting the team. But maybe there is something in play that the Lakers know that we don't know, that they will have some type of method or strategy to be able to do so now that we know that they're going to have Reeves and Doncic on the team. Doncic, incredible offensive force. Awesome that this year he really committed to being in shape and working on his body to make sure that he was able to be as available as he could this season. He still ended up, getting injured this past season. But having Doncic and then having defenders around him, that makes sense. But I'm not exactly sure what the strategy is by having Doncic and Reeves on the same team, where now you have two players that you can attack that you can attack with the players that you have, because they have issues defending the guards on the other teams. And it's not much of a big deal, as I said, when you only have one player that has that issue, but when you have two, that puts too much pressure on the other three players that you have on the court to be able to hide that said deficiency. So I don't know. Maybe there, like I said, there is something else, some other card that the Lakers have on deck that they haven't revealed just yet. Something that they're holding close to the vest in terms of their strategy, in terms of what they plan to do with their lineup between now and the regular season that's coming up later on this winter. Of being able to alleviate those issues, but right now I can't. I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm not seeing it. I don't understand the thought of holding on to Reeves. So maybe you guys, folks out there feel differently. Maybe you think I'm, tripping. Maybe you think I'm nuts to say that. You can let me know. Let me know in the comments if you guys feel differently, that you feel it makes sense to have Reeves and Doncic on the same team. Personally, I don't. I think that they are both incredible players. If Reeves went to another team, I felt like he would, provide a huge impact to that team. He would be a terrific piece for any team. But when you're talking about players that have those same weaknesses, and as I said, for both of them, that weakness comes in their defense and defending. I don't know if that is something that will help going forward. And even if you have two guys there that are incredible offensive players, we've seen it time and time again where we have teams that have incredible regular seasons. And don't get me wrong, the regular season matters, of where you're placed in the standings and home court advantage and all those things when we're talking about the postseason. But at the end of the day, when you get down to it, when we're talking about the postseason, you have to be able to play defense. When we're talking about the regular season, you're playing different teams, on a given night. Of course, you're going to play some of the same teams more than once over the course of the season. But that becomes intensified when we're talking about the postseason, where you're really digging deep and really honing in on that one team and honing in on matchups and strategizing strengths and weaknesses. And when you get down to that part of the season, when you're getting down to the postseason, when you're really intensifying those matchups between two teams, then you start getting into the details of how to be able to dismantle certain teams. And one of the things that is going to be an issue for the Lakers going forward is their defense. Unless they figure out a way to kind of switch things up with their lineup, maybe, you have an instance where Doncic and Reeves are not on the floor at the same time. Maybe that makes sense that they'll be able to kind of make this work. But if the plan is to have them both on the floor at the same time, in terms of long-term success, maybe short-term success, maybe they'll have a decent regular season. But when push comes to shove and it's time to really dig deep for the postseason, they are going to get targeted in those strategies that teams have in order to win those said series in the postseason. As I said, you can let me know if you feel differently, but that's where I stand. So that's what we have with our re-ups. Now, getting into the trades that we have. As I said, we had that major trade of picks and players for the Heat in order to be able to acquire Bobby Portis and, of course, the Greek Freak. What is it? Tyler Hero is going to be a great piece for the Milwaukee Bucks. It's going to allow them to get a little younger, to be able to have someone who can obviously score at a decent clip, whether we're talking about scoring in the paint or whether we're talking about, I feel like the more important thing of being able to score from the perimeter. And in this day and age of the NBA, which is seems to hold it holds, I don't want to say it holds an importance, but it seems to have a tendency to depend upon shooting from long distance, and Tyler Hero will definitely be able to do that for whatever team he plays for. He's a player similar to what we had that I mentioned before with Trae Young that can give you 20 points a night. So, he's going to be able to provide you with offense. But when we're talking about the Greek Freak, I will be interested to see how that's going to work with Miami. Miami had to give up a lot in order to get him. So I will be curious to see what other moves they make in order to have that trade make sense, because it feels like they had to gut a lot of the things that they had available to them to be able to have the incredible force that is Giannis. And we've seen it in the past where when teams have had to gut out their roster, it doesn't equate well to a good season that in the year that follows. Give you a good example that we had I guess you can say the experiment that you had with what was it, the Houston Rockets. Houston Rockets had Kevin Durant. You had Devin Booker and Brandon. I'm apologize. I'm brain farting on our franchise player that we had with the Wizards. But when you have 2-3 franchise players like that, it made it a challenge because you're coming up with the challenge of deciding who is the leader of that said team. For most, people would default to Devin Booker because he was there, has been there with the franchise through the changes that they made. But at the same time, when you're talking about the caliber of KD, you would think that KD is the person. However, KD is typically in the past shied away of being the guy. He's been essentially a merc for hire for many of the teams that he's played for, whether we're talking about the Warriors and the titles that were won with the Warriors, whether we're talking about the Nets and now with the Rockets. So more than likely he's going to end up that we're going to probably likely see a change there. I'm trying to see, and you have to forgive me, guys. I want to make sure that I remember, because I'm like I said, brain farting on the player there because he was with us when in that era with John Wall. So forgive me here. Let me see, because it's going to be bothering me. I promise you, it's going to be bothering me all day of not remembering his last name. So, okay. Mate with the Wizards. If you forgive me here, give me 1 second, because like I said, it's going to bother me to no end of not recalling, because I know that he was a terrific player for us, but unfortunately, I think with all the wear and tear of playing with the Wizards, I feel like that affected, his future play moving on to the Rockets. Okay, I'm going to find this person. Forgive me. keep saying Brandon. Bradley Beal. There you go. I apologize, Bill. Thinking of B names, but yes, Bradley Beal, KD, and Devin Booker. At one point, were all on the team together, and the idea was that those three players were going to be enough to be able to take them to the promised land and be able to take them to the finals. But with those three players, they had to gut out so much of their roster in order to secure those players that now you're completely relying upon that trio. And if one of them goes down, if two of them go down, it places you in a weird spot because you're paying these large salaries for these three franchise players, but at the same time, you're preventing yourself from being able to fill out your roster with the necessary pieces to help have a formidable team. Because I feel like in these days, two franchise players are enough for a team if you have enough pieces around the team that are able to play well together, that are able to complement each other. Just as I mentioned with some of the players just moments ago that are incredible offensive forces, if you surround them with players that are incredible defenders, you're going to have some success. I joke about LeBron James on here a lot with my co-host with Spills, and I'll give credit where credit is due. When you surround LeBron James with shooters, you're going to have great success because he's going to garner a lot of attention, and in that attention that he garners, he's going to be able to kick it out to the necessary shooter, providing the shooter the opportunity to be able to score. So, yeah, in this day and age, it's terrific if you're able to have three players. I feel like that's a luxury that some teams have and some don't, and that may just be because they were able to draft well, or just based on certain circumstances, how they played their cards, playing the long game. They somehow secured a third piece, a third scorer. But I feel like at least having two can help a said team as long as you are properly complementing those two players with the necessary pieces. I gave the example before when we're talking about Doncic and we're talking about Doncic and Reeves, two incredible offensive players, but unless they can give them the necessary defensive pieces to complement their game and to help support them for their lack of defense, it's going to be really hard for them to have long-term success. So with that, I want to be able to get into what we have in the draft. So give me one moment. And then let me know in the comments, guys, where you guys stand with the re-ups that we have here. As I said, we had it with Io, with Trey, and with Austin. But also let me know, where you stand. Oh, and I realized I did not get into LaMelo Ball. So I apologize for that. Before I get into the draft, let me dive in real quick with LaMelo Ball. I am very fascinating with the prospect of having LaMelo Ball, playing with Anthony Edwards. It's going to be, I will say it's going to be very fun to watch them play together, but I will also say that I have a bit of caution when it comes to the postseason, because LaMelo Ball is an entertaining player. He's going to get, fans in those seats in terms of his style of play. I feel like he's going to be he's probably going to have a terrific assists related season next year, with the number of assists that he will be able to provide to Edwards and being able to find Edwards. But with all of those things in mind, with the incredible entertaining player that he is in terms of his ability to score and his ability to pass and the flashes of the fancy ball handling and passes that he is able to pull off. I'm still have some concern when it comes to the postseason because, as I said, a lot of times when we're talking about the regular season, you're coming across different teams every night, so that doesn't really always give an opportunity for a team to really hone in on a team's weaknesses. As I said, yes, they may play a team more than once, but it's not intensified by playing the team repeatedly within a finite amount of time that you would have in the postseason. And I feel like a lot of those things that would be strengths for LaMelo Ball might get taken away when we're talking about the postseason. He is someone who likes to run the open court and get on. He likes to, push the ball and to get on those fast breaks. And when we're talking about the postseason, it's not unheard of for certain teams to make the efforts to take that away, where they're making it a half-court game and they're not making it a fast-paced game. I would be curious to see how Ball is able to adapt to playing a half-court ball where the pace is a lot slower and it's not as quick. I'm not exactly sure if he, if he would be up to task to deal with that. Of course, he may surprise me. Like I said, at the end of the day, the fan in me, loves the prospect of seeing, LaMelo lobbing it to Anthony Edwards and all the other players that you have on that said team. I feel like it's an exciting prospect when we're talking about the regular season as a whole, but when we're talking about selfishly thinking about the success of the T-Wolves, I'm not exactly sure he is a piece that's going to help you win a title. Again, could prove me wrong, but at least from what I've observed from LaMelo Ball, from his game and what he's capable of doing, he's an extremely talented player. I'm just skeptical if that is if it's going to translate to success in the postseason. Maybe they'll have a decent run in the regular season, but I'm not sure if it will translate. If anything, it will provide a reliable ball handler for Edwards, where Edwards doesn't feel like he has to do everything on that team, because I feel like because they didn't have a legit point guard or a reliable point guard, there were times where he was acting in that role, even though he is more of a shooting guard than he is a point guard. So by having someone that is purely that, I feel like it will relieve some of that pressure. So perhaps that will be enough to allow Edwards to be the Edwards that we know that he's capable of being able to dismantle other teams in the postseason. So we will see. We will definitely see how that plays out. Like I said, the prospect of it on paper, I love. I'm just skeptical on the success of how it will translate to the postseason. So getting into, let's see, the draft. Now, and speaking of the draft, we had the draft going on Tuesday as well as Wednesday. Had the first round happening on Tuesday. We had the second round happening on Wednesday. So for those of you out there, there were a lot of folks who, went to the teams that many folks assumed they would go to. There were some instances where players that went to certain teams made sense. In other instances, it didn't make a whole bunch of sense. So I don't want to go over every single pick, but I did want to go over a few of them. So let me see if I can pull that up for you guys. Give me one moment. All right, should be coming up now. So yeah, when we're talking about the state of the NBA and the players that were drafted, I know there were some that had a lot of publicity surrounding them. Of course, AJ, who went to the Wizards as a #1 pick. Darren Peterson going to the Jazz, Boozer going to the Grizzlies, and then Wilson going to the Bulls. I am curious to see how AJ his game translates to the NBA. Obviously, I do believe that he's NBA ready. I'm just curious to see how that's going to look when you are pairing him with Trae Young. Will he have an opportunity to play with Anthony Davis? I know that that's the big question. Obviously, if he's being paired with Trae Young, there's going to be opportunities for him to get easy baskets. But I feel like having Anthony Davis there will also help in his development as well. So I will be curious to see if it is confirmed that Davis will be staying with the Wizards, because I feel like by having AJ here, AJ Dybonza on the Wizards, that's going to give them an opportunity to do a whole bunch of different things with that said team, to try different lineups because of his versatility. But at the same time, I am curious to see how they're going to alleviate the matter with Davis in his reluctance to play at the 5 position. Because even with the addition of Trae Young, even with the addition of Dybonza, I am skeptical if that is going to change Anthony Davis not being in the 5 unless they figure out some other piece in their lineup to place there. Because if we're talking about Sarr, their prior draft pick, I don't foresee him going into the 5 position. I foresee if he is included in that starting lineup with Dybonza, with Young, and with Davis, that they will place him at the 4 versus at the 5. So perhaps they'll put some strategies in place to allow Davis to utilize his ability to step out into the perimeter. But if he's hesitant to be in that position altogether, I will be curious to see if he ends up staying with the Wizards, if they're not able to find a way around that that issue that he has at playing the 5, or if they will figure out some other way of finding a compromise of having him still play the 5, but utilizing strategies defensively and offensively where he doesn't have to be in the paint as frequently as he needs to, which is crazy to say considering how how much of a presence, how big Anthony Davis is, that he's someone who doesn't like being in the paint. I mean, I understand if you're on the front court, you're going to get a lot of punishment, you're going to receive a lot of punishment, but I mean, he's not a small dude, he doesn't have a small frame, he is a big dude. So I feel like in order for him to have continued success, and I could be wrong about this, but I feel like he has to get around that issue that he has being in the paint. I feel like that's really more of a conditioning issue. I feel like that's more of a issue in terms of preparation physically. That's why why, he continues to have the issues with his injuries. There have been players, and I'm not trying to be insensitive about, players getting injured. Players get injured all the time. I understand that as someone who has been athletic themselves, especially playing the sport of basketball, have injured themselves. But at the same time, injuries can also come about when your body is not able to handle the physical toll that can happen over a season. And by putting in the effort to ensure that those said, muscles that you are utilizing in that said sport are able to handle the stress of a said season, is going to be a less, not to say that it won't happen, but there will be a less likelihood of those injuries happen. We've seen it with other players. I give a lot of flack to, LeBron when I'm joking with my co-host, but he is someone who has demonstrated that he can be durable over the majority of a season. And that's crazy to believe that he is in his 40s and yet he has played more games in the last couple of years than some players that are in their 20s, that you would think would not have as much mileage, on their body to be able to play in the league, especially in this day and age that we have with load management, which is insane. And even with players on my said team, it's a known fact that Steph Curry, was having issues with his ankle. He was having ankle injuries, at one point in the early stint of his career. And the way that he was able to, get past that was by, doing the necessary training to get past those said issues. So while I understand, players can get injured and it can happen, time and time again, I feel like a good deal of it, especially when we're talking about Anthony Davis, can be alleviated by, preparing your body consistently, so that way it's able to take on the stresses and the impact of an NBA season. So we'll see if now, after having time spent with the Lakers and kind of being labeled with that issue of not, properly preparing your body, also having, having that issue with the Mavericks, who decided to move on from him and to, continue on with Cooper Flag. Now, in having this opportunity with the Wizards, if he will be willing to commit to doing that in the same way that we've had with other players. As I said, I mentioned at the top, Luka Doncic made that effort in now with the Lakers to, taking care of his body a lot more. And what it, obviously what it translated to, he was a leading scorer for the entire league. And I don't feel like that would have been possible if he wasn't in decent shape. But I digress. Excited about AJ joining the Wizards. I'm interested to see how he's going to be utilized with that team, because he does have, versatility in terms of the tools that he has. When we're talking about Darren Peterson, that's another interesting one, because, unless if you guys haven't been really keeping track of the draft, there was one point in which some folks were saying that Darren would perhaps take on that number one draft spot. But when we're talking about the Jazz are in need of a point guard. So I feel like that is a great fit for that said team. If he ended up with the Wizards, I don't know if we would have needed another guard. And now that we have Trey locked down for the next couple of years, I don't feel like it would have made sense to have Peterson included in that. We needed, size, and we needed versatility. I know, as I said, I already mentioned Sarr, who we have on the Wizards, but I feel like that's going to be a terrific pairing that we'll have with Banza. So, in talking about, as I said, Peterson, terrific addition. With Boozer, that's going to be an interesting piece as well, because of course we have Ja Morant, the whole matter of Ja Morant and what's going to happen with that saga that has been happening with the Grizzlies and Morant. I feel like the addition of Boozer is giving an indication of where they stand in regard to that said saga. I feel like this is a hint of where their loyalties lie and what their plans are. So you can let me know down below, how do you feel about Boozer? For those that are Grizzlies fans, Boozer joining with the Grizzlies, do you feel like he would be able to, or should say, do you feel like Morant would be able to coexist with Boozer, or do you believe, as I do, that Boozer is there as a replacement and kind of a changing of the guard? For me, that's where it feels like they're going. They have invested in the Morant era as much as they could, and it seems like it's just something that a relationship that's just not working. So perhaps it is time for a change of the guard and having Boozer. Couldn't find a more different player than from Morant than Boozer, but I feel like some of the antics that you have dealt with or gone through with Morant, as talented as he is, that I don't feel like you're going to have those same matters with Boozer. Having that pedigree of having, a parent who's also a pro, I feel like there has been enough development there on the part of Boozer to have someone in his corner who can help mentor him through an NBA season. Someone who's been there, done that, has had success in the league. If you have someone like that in your corner, I feel like it's going to, help translate to success in the league yourself. I don't know if that's really the case with Morant. As I said, as uber talented as Morant is, and I still believe that he has enough in the tank to join another franchise and to be a huge impact from that franchise and to potentially take them, to the promised land, so to speak, to the finals. I do believe that. I just feel like, just like you would have in like a relationship, right? That the relationship has run its course with the Grizzlies and that he needs to move on and start fresh somewhere else. I know a lot of people are hyping, getting into the fourth pick, hyping Caleb Wilson. Incredible talent, very raw. But, we've seen it where, players have been raw, and if they are willing to work, if they're willing to continue to develop their game, that they can have, incredible success in the league. Because you can't really teach having raw talent. If you just have incredible athleticism, if you have kind of that twitch related speed, those are things that can't be taught. However, when you can develop that further with the development necessary to have the necessary skills to be successful long term in the league. Once those skills start to diminish, then it puts you in a scary place, because not only are you someone who is fundamentally, I could talk today, is fundamentally sound, but it's always also someone who can take it to the next gear, because they also have the physical tools that will allow them to, do things that, other players just don't have the ability to do. I mean, Brunson has shown this season that you don't necessarily have to be the fastest player. You don't necessarily have to be the tallest player to be effective. But don't get me wrong, if you do have those skills, it can help, and it can help make things a little easier. When you have a freak of nature like Wemby, Wemby has, has some tools fundamentally that, that are great, but you can't teach height, you can't teach length. He just has that. And to be able to utilize that, that's just something otherworldly that you're also able to bring to the table as well. So definitely looking forward to what they have there. I wanted to get into Ade Mara, being able to provide some additional size for the Thunder. I know, even though, speaking of the Spurs, even though the Spurs did not win this season, they are a team that's going to be right there at the very end, just as they were this season. And even though they aren't the team that won the finals this year, don't be surprised to find, a bunch of franchises that are going to be in search of their Wemby stopper, someone who can compete against Wemby should they come across Wemby, not only in the regular season, but should they come across Wemby in the postseason, whether it's, in a conference-related playoff game or in the finals itself. So it will be fascinating to see, that play out. It's always fascinating to see how the NBA responds to not only the winners, not only the winner of the championship and how they match up with the NBA champion, but also with perennial teams that they know they're going to have to see if they want to get to the finals or even win the finals. So, don't be surprised to find that in terms of reactions that teams have and being able to match up with the Knicks, being able to match up with the Spurs, of course, being able to match up with the Thunder. The Thunder were right there. And I feel like if Williams was not injured, was 100% this year, that we would be having a different conversation, that we would have the Thunder against the Knicks. And who knows? I don't know if the Knicks would have gotten past the Thunder. So, you have that eventuality as well. So, as I said, I wanted to get into a few of these things. Just for the sake of time, I'm going to cut it here. But if there are any other components of this draft that were of interest to you, even when we're talking about the second round, because we know even in the second round, we have all-stars that come out of that said round and franchise players that come out of that said round. And then we have, busts that happen in the first round. So let me know, do you have any players that you are excited about in the second round that may be possible stars? Or are there any players in the first round that you feel might be overhyped? I'm curious to know your thoughts. You can let me down below. But that's going to do it for things here at This Week in Pop Culture. As I said, let me know where you're hailing from, whether you're watching this live or whether you are watching it after the fact. You can let me know down below. Hey, I'm in DC, or hey, I'm in LA. I know for one of the shows that we did, we had someone in Sri Lanka. So, always curious to know, always cool to know. And then let me know your thoughts on some of the said stories that we talked about today. As I said, thoughts on the legacy. Curious to know your thoughts on the legacy of Clive Davis, who passed away. He was 94 on Monday. Some of the information regarding our local metro system, our local public transportation. As I said, if you don't know, we've talked about it here on the show before, that we're in the DC metro area. So if you too are in the DC metro area, let me know your thoughts on some of the changes that are happening in regards to the fare card machines, as well as the new Series 8000 subway trains. And then last but not least, let me know your thoughts on what's what has happened this past week in the NBA, whether it's been the re-ups, those players that signed extensions or signed new contracts, and those players that were traded, the major trades that we had. This is in reference to Giannis, who you see here in our background, and also LaMelo, who you see in the background here. And then last but not least, your thoughts on the draft and franchises that got certain players. Curious to see how you feel. Maybe, your team got a player that you weren't excited about. Maybe you got someone that you were excited about. You can let me know down below. And then also, lastly, second and first round, where do you guys stand? Are there some sleepers that you feel that you have in the second round, or in the first round, some players that might not turn out to be as great as publicized? You can let me know. But again, Brandon Choi, Movers and Shakers Unlimited. Thank you guys so much for watching. You can find me at Brandon Choi ENT on X, and then Brandon Choi _ENT on Instagram. Again, thank you so much for watching. Be safe out there, and I will see you soon. Peace.